Hello, it's Jillian. I am recording this in my hotel in Islamabad, Pakistan. Just to give a little bit of context, I'm here as a panelist for the World of Tomorrow conference. It's happening today and tomorrow, March 11th and 12th at the Pak China Friendship Center. And it's chock full of panel discussions and debates and sessions. I think there's 42 sessions, 140 speakers. It's huge. My panel is tomorrow, but I wanted to do this sort of video reflection about some of the ideas and thoughts that are happening at the conference. Essentially for kind of my own research, but I thought they might be interesting to share with you, and so here goes. So I'm just going to kind of blast through this. A lot of it might be lacking a little context, but I'll try and kind of contextualize it as I go. I'm just going to kind of go through my notes here and talk about it. So basically, what we're talking about is the future, generally, the world of tomorrow, right? So kind of what's coming down the line. And it's interesting that these kind of conferences, there's a real polarization between the hopeful future and the depressive future, and there's not a whole lot in between. So you get one of the things we saw today was this short animated film, and it was terrifying. It was essentially describing this dystopian future in which digitization has taken over. You know, the internet now lives in the world and people are cloned, they don't have real experiences, you harvest memories, etc., etc. And most of the time, panelists in general talk about the problems of the future and what's facing us. And one of the things I noticed is that everybody talks about the uncertain future. That's what they were talking about a lot this morning. They were talking about the uncertain future and how it's more uncertain than usual now. Now, I find that a little strange because since when was the future certain? I mean, the future is not certain. It never has been certain. You can't have levels of certainty. I mean, I suppose you can if you're a scientist, but you know, I understand that the rate of change now is faster than it was before, so it's maybe harder to predict, but I don't think that humans have ever had a time in which they feel comfortable or knowledgeable about the future and what it brings. It's just like, when you talk about the future, because of our concept of time, naturally it's uncertain. There's no way to know. So I was just sort of questioning that as I was listening. It was just like, I'm not really sure if it's productive to be talking about how now is more uncertain than anywhere else. And a lot of people, especially, well, really across the board in the sessions, talk about the future as though it's very bleak, as though there's more problems facing us than usual. You know, the world is darker now than it ever has been. And it's another concept that I don't find very productive. Because, as somebody pointed out, actually the world is safer than it ever has been now. It's more inclusive than it ever has been, to put that together. So I was just kind of thinking about this, like, why does it always, when we think about the future, why is it always a dystopia? You know, it's like we can never imagine the future as simply life. You know, it's always a utopia or a dystopia. But when I look at the future, I think that it's just going to be a future. It will be life. People will be people. You know, dystopias are extreme, utopias are extreme. It's not in our nature to be that kind of simplistic societies. You know, dystopias and utopias are both very simplistic, and I don't find that human nature is conducive to that. And that kind of, I was thinking about this, you know, obviously a big theme of the conference is digitization, automation, and, you know, the robotic future and technology and how much it can help and hurt life. And I was thinking about this. They were talking all these horror stories about killer robots, but they were, also talking about what technology can do. And I was reflecting that, a lot of these dystopian visions come because they assume that we just keep on plunging headfirst into technology, which is kind of what we've been doing, especially with the computing age. Kind of as soon as we figured out how to do this stuff, we've just been doing it without really thinking too much about it. And I guess we've been so busy figuring out what we can do that we haven't really stopped to think about what we should. And so many of this, artificial intelligence is all about just finding out if we can make an intelligent robot without really thinking about if we should. And now the fact that we are thinking that we can't help ourselves but sort of keep creating until we can. And there's something to be said for that, but I think that, generally speaking, it seems that what we've proved over the last 10 or 20 years is that if we can think it, we can probably make it, given time. And so instead of thinking what can we make, we might want to start thinking about what should we make. So the other thing that I want to talk about from the discussions today that I thought was really interesting, which is this kind of concept of democratization and how the internet and the technological age has kind of democratized many fields that were previously very difficult to get into. That the arts are one of them. Today they were talking about entrepreneurs and startups. So assumption or fear, I guess, that if you democratize something, it will lose its value. We talk about this a lot in the arts, that, having all these people making videos on YouTube diminishes the value of art. But at the same token, what's really paradoxical about the arts world is that it makes itself exclusive and then wonders why it's not popular. Right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But, I've had a few conversations about this in the past, and I think the more that you are exposed to something, the more you understand it, and the more you appreciate the people who do it very well. Let's talk about this. For example, apps. Everybody makes apps these days. Everybody learns how to make apps, and you have billions, or I'm not sure if you have billions, but millions, thousands of apps that do a variety of things. And yet nobody talks about this problem with apps. They don't say, we should regulate the amount of apps, we should have less people making them because it's self-selecting. People really like the top ones, and the ones that are, kind of buggy, well, people don't end up buying those, and they get better eventually. And see that, and that's, I think, what would happen if the arts and other sectors would sort of follow this model of democratization, because it's about exposing people, allowing people to experience something, and then they can actually understand the difference between an amateur and professional. They can appreciate the people who are more technically skilled in something, and it's a more actually beneficial way for the arts professionals, and as opposed to kind of blocking people off and putting up all these barriers to entry. So I think it's really important to talk about this kind of stuff, this especially when it comes to art. It's my field, and in dance, it's, contemporary dance is so exclusive, and it doesn't even make an effort often to be understood. And then it laments the fact that people don't watch contemporary dance. And so I think that there has to be a more democratic approach, but it won't diminish value. I actually think it will add to value. So I was thinking about that. So I'm thinking about dystopias and thinking about democratization. There was a lot of other stuff, but those were kind of the main meat of the discussions that I found really interesting today. So thanks for listening. If you have questions, thoughts, comments that you'd like to share, add them in the comments. If you like the video, please like and share, YouTube crap like that. And I'll be back tomorrow with the ideas that came up in day 2 of the World of Tomorrow conference.